Thank you guys for joining us. What we're going to start with is an introduction by our instructor. And we wanted to let you know that this course is being recorded and will be posted on the RMS website approximately 5 days after we get it. Sometimes we have to edit it. We will have someone in the question and answer, one of our subject matter experts online with us as we're doing our training, answering questions. So to make sure everybody's question is addressed. After each training section, we'll also have an opportunity for you to verbally ask your questions if you've got them. Any questions, and we'll go ahead and get started. All righty, take us away, Mr. Daniel.
Okay. Well, let's start off with introduction. My name is Daniel Gann. I'm one of the help desk support techs here. So I guess let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so this is beginner training. We're just going to be going over the basics. Some of the information is going to be handled more specifically by your individual districts. And to be clear, we're not providing any guidance on policies or regulations. Refer to your district for that. Right here, these are the basic topics that we're going over. This next slide is a little more detail in what we'll be covering. You can come back to this later. Throughout this training, we're going to have some YouTube tutorial links available to you that can be useful to review some of the things we're going to cover, as well as how to do some of the different things that are inside of RMS. Okay, so this is your RMS launcher. It's the first thing to come up when you open RMS. The launcher, basically what it does is it's going to contact the server and it's going to check for updates, and then it'll launch RMS once it's verified that you're on the latest patch. There's some YouTube videos on here related to installing and updating, but you can come back to that. Again, this entire presentation will be available from our website. All right, on this is just covering a couple things. Occasionally people will get a disconnected message. Typically that's due to your shortcut pointing to the wrong location. You might have missed an update. There's some YouTube videos here as well that will help you with that disconnect message. The other common thing that we see is due to a Windows issue, usually from multiple monitors, where the launcher will open and then the RMS window, it looks like it didn't open. It's usually opened in a minimized state. You can just right-click on your taskbar on the RMS icon and select Maximize. Just wanted to cover that real quick. Okay, this next screen, this is the login screen. As you can see, there's a ton of information here. Starting up at the top right, you have the support and the RMS website links. One thing to note is that the support link will not work if your default browser is Internet Explorer. You'll need to have a different browser set as your default in order for that button to get you to our support site. Also, you can always give us a call at 442-333-1011. The RMS website, it has useful things like a link to our RMS YouTube channel, documentation for RMS, so the government manuals, the contractor manual, in case you want to go review that. Also has the notes on our recent releases and updates on things like this training. So as a new government user, or as a government user, excuse me, most of you will be logging in using your CAC. If you open up RMS and your name doesn't show up there in the middle, you can click that refresh button, refresh smart card, and it should resolve that issue for you. And then you should be able to click log in. Down on the left, you can see there's a server connections button. And what that's going to do, it'll take you to another screen that will have a button that says Start Test. You can click on that to run a test of your connection to the RMS servers. It's helpful if you run into issues logging in, because it'll let you know how fast the connection went through, as well as if it runs into any issues. At that point, you can check in with us to see if anything's going on or if there may be an issue on your side. Sometimes updates to or changes to networks can cause issues. However, the government network usually works just fine. Below the server connections is the section that has your installation version or the patch level. Currently, we're on patch 348, and if you look at this screenshot, you can see that this is an older version because it says 328. So if you were to open up RMS and you've seen on our website that the current level is 348 and you opened it up and yours says 328 and you can't log in, you've missed a patch and we'll need to get you updated to get you going. And then lastly, on the bottom of the login screen here, you'll see that there's the scheduled maintenance. And this is useful because you can see the dates and the times that we have scheduled maintenance. You can expect that RMS may not be accessible. The good news is this usually happens over the weekend, so minimal effect to productivity. All right, so once you've gotten logged in with your CAC, first thing you're going to come to is this screen. This map screen is where you're going to get to your various districts. There's a few ways to do it. You can click on your district on the map, or you can pick it from the USACE division over on the right-hand side, if you know which division your district is part of. Honestly, I think most folks usually just click on the map. I know I do. At the top is your recently used districts. If it's your first time logging in, the box up at the top right there is going to be empty. Otherwise, it's going to show you the last 4 that you've gone into. So you can see here in this example, whoever this user was in Huntsville, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Okay, so some users are going to have access to more than one district. If you don't have access to if you do not have access to a district and you click on it, you're going to get a message stating that access is denied or login was failed. Whichever district you need access to, you'll have to have a district administrator verify that they have both created a staff record for you in RMS and linked your CAC to the staff record. One thing to note with that is if it's your first time logging in, before they can link your CAC, you'll need to log into RMS with your CAC in order to create your account, then log out, let the district admin know that you've successfully logged in, then they can go in and link your CAC to your staff record. Once that's done, you should be able to access your district. Okay, we've got a lot going on this one. This is some navigation. There's some useful stuff here. We'll start, this top portion here is once you've actually logged into a contract. Up at the top on the left, next to the castle icon, you'll see the title of your contract. It's going to be shows up right next to the castle, and just next to that, in the square brackets, is your contract ID. To the right of that is going to be the contract number, and then it's not in this screenshot because this one doesn't have it, but to the right of the contract number would be a delivery order number if that contract had one. Another thing to note up at the top, there's a help button. The help button is going to give you a few different things. One, it's going to give you access to the RMS website. And 2, it's going to give you a link to our support website. Now, again, if Internet Explorer is your default browser, you will not be able to get to the support website. But you can always just go to our RMS website and then select support from there. Anyway, another thing to notice is under the help button, there's also an option to check to make sure you have the latest version. The next button we're going to talk about here is the back button. The back button, and we'll come back to refresh, but the back button is your save button. There is no save in RMS. So if you're doing work and you hit log out, that work is gone. In order to save anything in RMS, you need to click on back. Let's see here. Now the refresh button, let's say you're in a contract and you're working on something. That refresh button might start to spin. If it's spinning, that means that someone else is also working on something in that contract. It may or may not be related to the same module or the same task that you're working on. So if you see that start spinning, a good practice would be to go ahead and click refresh. This way you can ensure that you're not going to go be overwriting someone else's work and they're not going to be overwriting yours. Another best practice would be if you're doing a ton of work is to break it up. So, do a big chunk of work, hit back so that it saves, go back in, do the next portion. But, if you know that nobody else is going to be editing it, you can always just do it all at once, hit back, save it, and then move on. And then the only other thing here that we wanted to mention is the other three tiles up there. You've got the one at the top for the government mode home, and that's going to take you back to the map. So it's going to take you all the way back to that first screen that you saw. Then you've got the contract selection. That's going to take you into the screen that you'll see when you first log into your district, and then the contract menu button. The contract menu button is just going to take you back to the first screen that you see when you log into a contract. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper into navigation and the different areas in here. So once you've logged into your district, this is what you're going to see. There's two things to note about this view. Down at the bottom right, you've got a couple radio buttons. You've got the ability to display contracts or display projects. Now, basically what this means is displaying by contract is going to give you the way RMS sees it. It's going to have your contract number, the contract ID, the delivery order number, all that. Display by projects is going to display it based off of the P2 projects that it's linked to. Now, one thing to note with this is, let's say you needed to add a project. If you notice the picture on the right, the only button that you have is edit. You can't add or archive if display projects is selected. So if you run into something where you're trying to add, double check the bottom right and make sure that you have the right selection. And then as far as the buttons there with the add, edit, and archive, that's going to be, of course, how you add a contract, edit one, or archive it if you have the proper permissions to do so. This next screen is just more on what we just went over, so we can go ahead and move on. You can review that at your leisure. Various ways to view what's in the district. So first thing to notice here is you've got this search bar here. This is the bottom portion is going to be a data grid that's going to have all the contracts. Now, if you're not seeing all the contracts, or you go to search for something and it's not pulling up, and I apologize, in this screenshot it is kind of covered a little bit by this actions for this view box, but it'll tell you if you're looking in a sub office, all contracts, future contracts, anything like that. And in order to change that, so let's say you look for a contract, you know it should be there. look in this middle section behind this actions for this view and see what the data is actually being filtered by. And then you can go up to the top left for the district contract statuses and make your changes there. And then, of course, like we talked about before, you've got your actions. Now, up here across the top, this is going to be district specific. These are going to be all things that are specific to the districts. You'll have to have permissions for most of that stuff, and most of it's a little bit more advanced than what we're going to be covering here. Oh, I almost missed on that last page. There was also the export option. You have the option to export to either Excel or PDF in most of the data grids and modules that we have. A lot of users find the Excel a little bit easier or more useful. Okay. So adding favorites. So when you go into a contract, at the top right, you're going to have a little star button that says mark as a favorite. And when you do that on your contract selection screen, right here in the top middle, it's going to populate that. Now you can only have 4 favorites, but if you know that you've got a few contracts that you have to do a ton of work in every week, it's a good idea to put it there. It'll save you a little bit of time. Over on the right-hand side is your recent contracts. That is only going to show the last 4 contracts that you've been in. So if you've got a ton of different contracts that you're going in and out of, you know, it's always a good idea to save a couple favorites. But let's say some things change and you want to remove that. You can either hit the X button that's on the right-hand side of that favorites box, or when you're in the contract, you can just click the mark as favorite again, and it will remove it from that list. Okay, sorting and grouping. Now, pretty much everywhere in RMS, you're going to come across data grids. And basically all of them, with the exception of the contract selection, is going to have sorting and grouping available. Now, in the contract file is already going to have sorting and grouping set up for you, but the other modules, you'll need to set up your own sorting and grouping. And you can see here, this is the contract reports. This already has sorting and grouping, but you can sort everything with the tiles across the top. And so I'm only going to show you, across the top, it's only going to show you the things that are going to be underneath that title. And then let's see, if you're inside of another data grid and you want to sort it based off of one of the tiles up at the top, all you have to do is click and hold on that tile, and you can drag it into the middle gray box there, and then let go. What happens is it'll put the sort on it, or it'll filter it like that, and it's only going to show you things related to that title. And then, as you can see down here in the bottom, everything is grouped where you've got the arrows up or down. If it's pointing up, obviously it's going to collapse it. If it's pointing down, that's going to expand it and let you see what's under that category. Okay, filtering. Next part of this is going to be filtering. You can filter data grids with the little funnel off to the right-hand side, and then you'll see it populate with all the or all the possible options that you have. And then you can go through and individually select them, or you can set it to be number that's greater than this or equals to this, however you need to filter it. You can also do and or statements, so you can test for 2 different things at the same time. And then you can just click on the filter again once you're done to close that box, and everything, and it'll still show the filter in the data grid. You can click on the funnel icon again, and then say clear filter if you want to get back to the original view. And then that video link that was on that page is a YouTube video that covers how to do that, a live demonstration of it. Okay, so using the search box, like we mentioned before, there's search boxes with pretty much every data grid here. It's going to save you a lot of time. So let's say you're in the QC reports and have 1,000 or two QC reports, and you only want to find the one that you know is number 110. Then you can just type in 110 into that box, and it's going to get everything down for you to make it a whole lot faster for you to find the one that you need. Exporting the data grid. Like we mentioned before, you've got the export option. When you click on the export, RMS is going to give you the option to export to Excel or PDF. Again, it's whichever you prefer. I know a lot of the users that I interact with prefer the Excel to the PDF, but you can do whichever. Okay. So this is another set of grouping. And if you notice, there's the green button here on this screen for a live demo. And it's going to show you exactly what we're talking about here. But basically, you can grab any of the column headers and then drag them into the gray box. And that's going to allow you to group by that column header. Now, any grouping that you do like this is not saved. So if another user was to be logging in and trying to look at the same information as you are at the same time, they're going to see the default view unless they set up a grouping of their own. As soon as you back out of that module and then go back into it, the grouping is gone. But it does help when you're trying to work with the data that's in there at the time that you're working on it. All right, so once that you've logged in to a contract, this is what the view is going to look like. Probably the biggest thing you're going to notice is the action item dashboard up at the top, right across the middle of the screen there, and the three colors associated with those. So if something's coming up as green, everything's good, nothing's late. Anything that's high or medium action item is going to be yellow or orange. And then red means that there's high action items that need to be dealt with. If something's red, you need to click on it and find out what those action items are. Orange means it's a medium action item and needs attention. And then yellow is low action items that need attention. Basically, the action items are past due if they're not green, and action needs to be taken to clear that up. Okay, so this is more on the action items. Now, there is a difference between what you'll see as government mode versus what the contractor is going to be able to see. All right, now, how do those action items get in there? So on your contract menu, you can go into the action items and individually select which action items that you'll need for this contract. And as you can see, the alert level is already set in there for you. And up at the top, you've got the option to copy from another contract, enable all, or disable all. And then if you want to go through and individually select each one, you just single click it in the list here. You also have the search option if you're trying to find one in particular, and then select either enable or disable. And then as you can see there, there's a responsible party field. The blue box right there is where you're going to be able to assign it to an individual. Once that's been done, you can click the back button, and when you get back to the data grid, this is going to update with who you're assigning a particular action item to. Okay, this is a little bit more information on document packages. You can review this at your leisure because we're going to go a little bit deeper into it as we move forward. Okay, so adding attachments. One thing I'm going to say about document packages is that they are everywhere inside RMS. They're part of the invoices, submittals, pay activities, contractor payrolls. Pretty much every module has a document package of some kind. So when you first open up a module, and let's use QC report or QA report, excuse me, for the government mode. Say you're going into a QA module, making a QA report, and you want to be able to add documents, excuse me. You want to be able to add documents to the report. So you open it up, and there's nothing showing down at the bottom. That's all right, because that's a default view. It's not gonna add anything until you tell it to. So to add the first document package to whatever it is that you're adding to the document package. Now keep in mind, there's no limit on how many document packages you're gonna have, but best practice is to keep it down to 2, maybe 3. Usually, if you can keep everything down in one document package, it's a little bit easier to sort through that. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So you can see the buttons here. You've got add. That's obviously how you're going to add it. Edit. If you've already got something loaded in there, you can edit the files, and then delete. Now, keep in mind with the delete button, if you delete something that's already been sent to PCF, it's still in PCF. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to be, use delete sparingly, because it is part of the document packages are part of the legal record there. Adding attachments on this screen here. You can add documents. Once you've clicked the add button, then you're going to come to this screen here. You've got the option to edit the document package. That's what this view is. This is also where you'll accept the package or return it for corrections if it came from the contractor. Okay, on that yep. So you can drag and drop attachments or documents in here. Now you can only sign Word or PDF documents. Now, if let's say you dragged Word document in here and dropped it in, and then you signed it, it's going to change the sort tile up at the top where it's going to count how many of each different kind of document that you have. The Word documents will go from 1 to 0, and the PDF documents are going to go from 0 to 1, because whenever we sign anything in there, it's going to change it over to PDF format. Then you can see down here in this bottom screen here, the status shows whether it was signed by the government, signed by the contractor. You can click on a single document and then sign selected document, or if you've got multiple selected, you can sign selected documents. Again, the only things that you'll be able to sign are PDFs and then Word documents, which will be converted to PDF. But you do have the option to upload images, text files, other things. You just won't be able to sign them. And that's how you'd actually complete it. Okay, and you can see on this screen, once you've done what you need to with this, you can either accept the package down here on the bottom or return it for corrections. Now, you've also got the option to edit the document title here. We recommend not changing the prefix or anything like that, but if you needed to add something to that, you can. Then you also have the option to save the document to a file if you want to save a copy of that locally on your machine. You can do that from here as well. So deleting attachments. So you can, as you can see here, you can select one of the or any of the documents here. You can click on the delete button. Once you click delete, especially if it's something that's signed, it's going to double check with you to make sure that you want to remove this. Because once you delete something, that's it, it's gone. If you delete something out of a document package here or in the contract file or anywhere else, it's out of RMS. It's gone. It's not something that you're going to be able to get back without having to redo the whole thing. And again, with it being part of the legal record, okay, and this is again covering signing documents and where the Word documents are going to get converted to PDF once they're signed. Okay, at this point, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Okay.
I think all the questions have been answered for this section. I think I have one question that has been asked that hasn't been after. So return an attachment to the contractor and go back and your comments are no longer visible. Why? We have someone asking that we need to answer that one.
If we're ready, then we can go ahead and move on. So next thing we're going to go through is the administration tab. This isn't this is a list of some of the things we're going to be covering. It doesn't cover everything that's going to be here that's inside of RMS, but it's a brief overview of what we're going to cover today. So this is your contract menu screen. I know we've mentioned it previously in some of the other stuff. When you first log into a contract, your default view is going to come up on the admin tab. And just for reference, everything across the middle here in the black rectangles, we're going to refer to those as tabs. And then the large blue portions here, those are going to be modules. So this is the administration tab. Now, this screen here, this is just going over everything that we're going to be talking about. You can come back and read this at your leisure. We'll just go ahead and get into the next one here. This is, again, a little bit more information about all the stuff that's going to be inside the admin tab. So we can move on to the next. All right. So this is the contract description. This is where you're able to set up the contract or get it set up. And it's pretty much the first part of setting up a new contract in RMS. So you've got up at the top, you've got your contract title, the short title, contract number, delivery order number, fiscal year. Now, something to keep in mind, if this is going to be something that is linked to CFMs, you're going to want to make sure that your contract number and delivery order number match exactly with CFMs. If you're off by a character or number or anything like that, it's not going to work. You'll either need to correct it on the contract description, or you'll have to correct it in CFMs, whichever one needs to be edited. Okay, and then down here you've got your contract description where you can put a brief description for all that. And then you can select the location from the map to include latitude and longitude. Let's see, is there anything else I needed to cover for this? Okay, so the stuff down here at the bottom can be filled in just depending on what your district policy is. Contract status. The contract status is basically just a quick snapshot of where your contract's at. Across the top, you've got status photos, monthly progress, and status/issues. Now, we're not really going to go too far into the monthly progress because this is the beginner's training, and that is definitely more of an advanced module. Here's some more information on it if you want to review that. Okay, so then the contract status photos tab. Now, when you first log into a contract, the picture that's displayed there, if you have a contract status photo, the most recent status photo is going to be what's on the contract menu when you log in. If you don't have one loaded, it's just going to be the default RMS image, like the one that's on the launcher. You also have the option here to save the photos that are in there to a file if you want to have them locally stored, as well as upload new status photos. Okay, this is the phase status and issues. This is where you're going to enter all the information around contracts with like a single phase. Contracts with more than one phase, you'll be able to enter both phase information. You'll be able to select what the contract status is by using the blue box up here at the top. It'll bring up a lookup field that allows you to choose which phase, and then you'll be able to select the primary delay code by clicking the blue box on the right. And again, it's going to pull up a lookup field. And let's see, if you, it's probably, now if you open either of those and what you're looking for isn't in that list, it could be that it wasn't set up for your district. You can double check with a district admin and see what needs to be done to get that added. Any remarks that you need to make can go in the box here. Okay, and then the issue remarks as of the date there. It's a good idea to make sure that you put that date in there. Because any action items or things that need to be done related to that are going to be based off of that date. And then on that last screen, the stuff at the bottom is information coming from P2 if your contract is linked to P2. And see the cost time growth is basically a summary of what's been changed in your contract. And now this is beyond the scope of this training, but there is a demo available on the YouTube site. Excuse me. Okay, contract personnel. This is how you would add people to your project delivery team. So inside the contract personnel module, you have the ability to add your project's delivery team members up at the top using the little add, edit, and delete buttons. Okay, if you needed to add someone, you'll click the add button, of course. If you need to delete them, click on their name and then select delete. After you also have filter option. You have a list of all users that are in the district itself by user role.
All right, so on this screen right here, we have contract personnel. On the contract personnel, you get to the screen, just in case you're curious, you go to the administration, you open up contract first, you go to administration. Once you're on administration, you go to contract personnel. The idea behind contract personnel is the ability to see who has what position title on the contract. This also helps other people who look at the contract, whether or not they're higher in rank than you, or even if it's just us here at the RMS Support Center. A lot of times we'll get somebody asking, hey, for this contract, I need to contact somebody who works on this contract. So, you know, not everybody goes in here and sets up the contract personnel on each one of these contracts, but it's real helpful if you take the time to do that. It's also helpful when it comes time to, you know, who's going to sign off on the daily reports, who's the COR, you know, or who's the person that's going to approve the ENG 93, you know, the finances or whatnot. So it definitely pays to spend the time to set this up if it hasn't been set up. Now, if you're, you know, if this is the first time you've ever used RMS and, you know, you're looking at RMS, you know, hey, what's going on? The screen, usually you're not going to be doing any data input in the screen as a new RMS government user. So, you know, if this is your first time using RMS, you're going to come here to say, all right, well, who's the the PM, or who's the COR, or who's the person who deals with the COR, for example, who deals with the daily report signups and all that. So this is just a screen for helpful reference, and you can go in here to look at that stuff. Most likely, if you're new to RMS, you probably won't even have permission to edit the screen anyway. So, all right, go ahead and go next. Perfect. Here is just showing how you can add, edit, and delete, you know, project delivery team members. Again, you're probably not going to be doing anything on here if, you know, you're a new government user. Just keep in mind that in order to save the change you made to the screen, you want to hit the back button. So remember that too, that back button, you know, it was mentioned by Daniel earlier, that kind of saves everything to the database. The reason why, you know, RMS has that saving data to database screen is because we want to make sure that it gets saved there before you exit out and go on to other things. And sometimes those servers can be a little bit overloaded with all the data that goes into them. So you might have to wait there a few seconds to do that. Contract, go ahead and go to the next one. Contract documents. Those are the 2.38, RMS 2.38 legacy documents that were stored at the contract level. Some contracts used it, some didn't. If you don't see anything here, don't worry about it. It's kind of just a holding tank for old contracts that have been going on for a long time that may have some legacy 2.38 contracts. These are more of like those hydro dam contracts, or, you know, 10, 15-year contracts that have been going on forever. If you don't know what 2.38 is and this is blank, you're good. Don't worry about it. Move on. All right, the contract file. This is a very important area of RMS. Why is it important? Because if you're new to RMS, you've submitted documents in RMS, you may or may not have had somebody tell you, hey, how come your document isn't off to PCF? PCF is paperless contracting file. It is mandated that every electronic and paper piece of paper copy gets sent off to PCF. Inside of RMS, how do you get stuff off to PCF? You have to use a document package. That document package just by itself won't get stuff off to PCF. You have to go into that document package and complete it. And usually PCF wants it wants the document package to be electronically signed. So if you have something from your contractor that gets sent to you, say a QC daily report, they signed it, you need to complete that document package for it to go off to PCF. Now, why is that important? The contract file module, again, this is in Open Up Contract, go to Administration tab, and go to Contract File module. The contract file lets you know what is or has been sent off to PCF. If it's not in the contract file, it's probably not in a daily report, et cetera, et cetera. So contract file is kind of like a collection of all the documents that may or may not have gone off to PCF. So for example, you see on the screen here, these are a breakdown of all the modules inside of RMS, right? You've got the contract administration, the correspondence, the payments. These are all modules that have document packages, and it's important that every single document package gets completed and sent off to PCF. So for example, on this screen, we have correspondence at the bottom right-hand corner there. There's a correspondence that has not been signed, electronically signed. From what I'm hearing from people that contact me that use RMS, you might get yelled at, hey, your document didn't make it to PCF. You also might get yelled at, hey, your document that got sent to PCF wasn't signed. So it needs to be electronically signed. RMS gives you the ability to sign PDFs and Word documents inside of RMS with your CAT card. Same for the contractor. The contractor, even if they don't have a CAT card, they can go in and sign it. So also in the contract file, instead of having to go specifically to a module inside of RMS, say to the daily reports, you can just go directly inside of contract file and hit add to add a file to the contract file. And boom, that gets sent off to PCF. So this kind of looks like a document package, but this is kind of a short around way of, all right, I need to put something to PCF, I'll just do it here. Instead of, most of the time, you're going to be getting those document packages from daily reports, from payments, from correspondence, from RFIs, and you'll be doing the document packages stuff there, and it will get to the contract file automatically that way. But if you need to add something manually, you can go here and do it. The contract file is kind of an important place in RMS because it's the collection of all the documents in the contract. So this can be big or small depending on the size of the contract. Okay, so this just shows, how you manually or how you edit a document once it's been attached. So kind of the idea behind RMS 3.0 is you're not just sending data, right? You're going to probably attach something, whether it's an ENG whatever document for ENG 93 for payments, ENG 4025 for transmittals, 1354 stuff for the closeout. I mean, it can be whatever, right? If you want, you can go inside of the PCF document here inside the contract file and manually add a document. It's easier to work in the document packages, but this is just a short, quick around way of doing it if you need to. But again, here you can edit the document, you can view it, you can save it, sign it, whatever you got to do. Go ahead. All right, so we have inside of contract setup, again, if you're a brand new government user, you're probably not going to be doing anything in the screen. So this is kind of for information, but it does give you an idea of how your contract is set up, right? So inside of your contract setup, you've got a whole bunch of tabs. Usually administrators have access to this stuff. You may or may not, but if you do, this governs how your contract is set up via administration, how you do payments, how your schedule is done, what days or work days on your QA reports, if your contract has any dredging, that sort of thing. And yeah, deviate tab is going away. So that will be a future, something that RMS may or may not be doing in the future. But anyway, contract setup. This is a very important screen because it tells you how your contract is configured, right? Whether or not your government can enter data specifically in modules, whether or not you're tracking insurance, whether or not there's 2.38 access. Obviously, no one uses 2.38 anymore, so that's kind of an old thing. But some of the funding options down at the bottom, whether or not it uses a U.S. currency type. So those of you that work with contracts overseas, you can see what currency type is assigned. Most contracts are going to be U.S. dollar. We do have some foreign currency contracts overseas. But CFM's database, again, if you're a new government user, you're not going to be doing anything in here. So this is all just kind of for information only, right? Yeah. All right, we're moving on to the payment modifications tab. Here you have, what obligations CFM's accounts are linked to this contract. Obviously, for most of our training contracts, we are not linking to anything CFM's. So a lot of our screenshots will show non-CFM's accounts. But of course, on most of your contracts, there will be CFM's accounts linked to your contract. Who is going to be signing your modifications? The ACO and CO, that's also done on the screen. This is kind of a for your information only. A lot of this is actually changed on the finances, contract finances module, but we might be getting into that later. All right, next. The quality assurance tab, this has to do with your daily reports. Who is going to be the PE and the on-site Corps of Engineers representative, how many shifts there are, if you have, day shift, night shift, 3 shifts even, how many expected work days there are. So when you do the, how many daily reports are expected per week here. So this is where you set some of that stuff. This is also where you set the QA daily report type, because there's 2 types of daily reports in RMS, right? You've got your military and you've got your civil. So those mean the daily report will come out vastly different from one another depending on how that's set. So you set that here, and usually if you're changing anything here, it's on contract setup, right, or at the beginning. You don't really want to go here and change stuff unless you absolutely have to later on. All right. Okay, so the submittal schedule tab. This is an important tab for the contractor schedule. So when I say the schedule, I mean whether or not the contractor is going to be manually inputting their start finish dates, or they're going to be using something like Primavera. Most large contracts, at least from what I've seen, they require that the contractor use Primavera. So that drop down right where the red dot is, that will be set. The contractor will import from an NAS, right? Not manually. Now, if the contract's a tiny contract and they're not required to use Primavera, you'll have it set like it is right now. So that's important from that aspect. Yes, because it's dependent on contract, your district policy and whatnot, but that'll determine how the contractor gets their schedule, their invoices, their activities, their start finish dates, everything into RMS, right? So also here on the screen are the submittals, whether or not your district office has a policy on the review days for each type of submittal, whether it's government acceptance for information only, and all the others there, and copies, right? This was more important back in the day when I first started a long time ago. They used to require many physical copies. So your district may have, no physical copies, right? Or whatnot, but all that can be set here. And again, anything changed here is from that point forward. All right. Okay, let's see here. All right, so here is the P2 projects module. So we moved off and we're at a P2 projects module. So this is back on the administration tab. So you open up your contract, you go to administration tab, and then P2 projects. Again, if you're a brand new contractor, you're probably not going to be doing anything in here. So you're going to want to contact somebody in your office or your district and say, hey, I need help setting this up. We had some questions in the Q&A about some of the linking to P2 projects. There's been issues linking to P2 projects in the past. Most of that, I believe, is resolved now. But one thing to specifically note is your contract number. How that's typed up has to match exactly what it's in P2. Because if it doesn't match exactly what's in P2, it's not going to link up and bring over those milestone dates, statuses, and other. There's a lot of information that goes back and forth between P2 and RMS. So again, if your contract number doesn't have spaces, or it does have spaces, or it has dashes instead of, it needs to match exactly what's in P2. And if you still have problems, please contact the RMS Support Center. We can help you out because we have access to, at least on the RMS side, to try to figure out where the problem is and kind of guide you where to go. All right, so P2 projects, it kind of gives you an idea of what's coming over, whether, the milestone events, the dates coming over from P2, to try to minimize that swivel chair issue that we've got with AIS systems, right? You don't want to have to go into one system and enter data, go into another system and enter that same piece of data, and vice versa with a whole bunch of other systems. So RMS tries to interface with CFMs and pulls as much information down as we can. Same thing with P2, and for example, Primavera isn't necessarily a government AIS, but it's it's something that the contractor can use. Some government contracts do use Primavera as well with P2 and whatnot. So there's a lot of interface abilities there with RMS, trying to minimize that swivel chair approach. All right, so correspondence. Correspondence is a module where you're going to be communicating with your contractor a lot. This differs a little bit from requests for information. There's several types of different correspondence you can have from the contractor's home office, from the contractor's site office, and when you send a letter to the contractor, that's the C format. Now here's something that you want to know. We get a lot of government people asking this. Well, how come I don't send my contractor an RFI? RFIs are request for information. It usually comes from the contractor only. There are very specific cases in RMS where some contracts in some districts, they're very rare, the government will actually go in and do an RFI. But here is where you'll be sending stuff off to the contractor if you need to. Each correspondence item has its own corresponding document package. So right in here, you open up correspondence. It's organized up at the top. Just so you guys know, if you didn't know, each one of those blue tiles are clickable. So I can click on received all, and it will show all the received correspondence items. I can click on all sent, that blue tile, and it will sort all the correspondence below in the module is all sent. Hit the add button when you click add. That's what that lower left-hand corner is. You have letter to contractor, the RFP, letter from other agency, letter from contractor home office, government in-house memo. Those are the only types of correspondence that you can add as a government user. It also depends on whether or not your contract is set up to enter contractor data or whatnot. But yeah. So keep in mind that center title there, that correspondence received answer required, that lets you know which tab you're on. So if you're not seeing a correspondence item and you do a search for a correspondence you know is in the system, keep an eye on what module you're in, okay? Because that'll let you know what you're saying. So if you sent a correspondence item and you're searching in the received all, you're not going to find it. So keep that in mind when you're switching from tile to tile there. And again, keep in mind, correspondence each has document packages. So you can go in and drag and drop a whole bunch of scanned documents to that document package and put in a summary and all that stuff. All right. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you go and add a letter to the contractor. RMS will automatically increment the letter number, so you really don't have to deal with that unless you want to. You can if you want to. And you hit the OK button to add a correspondence item. All right. So this is what a correspondence looks like. Obviously, it's a C letter, so it's from the government to the contractor. Again, it's a little complicated at first, but once you start working with it, it becomes secondhand. You can let the contractor know, hey, this requires an answer by checking that box. Right where those boxes are at the bottom there, you can select whether or not this answers something that was previously there. You can create a new letter to answer it. You can select letters that are answered by this letter. So there's a lot of power, which adds a little bit of complexity to the correspondence module. Keep in mind, too, that document package in the center. So if you've got a whole bunch of scanned documents that are a part of your question, just add a document package, drag and drop all of them into RMS. Keep in mind that the larger the file that you are adding to RMS, it can take some time to upload to the servers. But anyway, that document package, by the way, how do you get that off to PCF? Is you'll need to edit that and complete off the document package. So keep that in mind as well. You don't want to leave that document package in the not complete status like it is right there. On this screen that we're at right now, this is what a document package looks like. You can drag and drop a whole bunch of files either into that white box in the middle or up at the top right-hand corner, the drag and drop attachment files here. So I can take a whole bunch of files from Windows Explorer, drag and drop them into the white box in the middle or to the drag and drop attachment files here. Either one's fine. And I can sign them or choose not to sign them. Remember, hit that back button to save all the files. And again, if I uploaded or if I drag and dropped, say, 20 files and each one of them are kind of sizable, keep in mind, it can take a while for that to get up to the government servers, okay? And you want to make sure it does. So keep that there, until it uploads. And again, this document package will not go off to PCF until it's been completed. So there's options on the bottom right-hand corner to complete out each one of the document packages, if you want. All right. Okay, so this shows how to sign documents in your document package. So you'll notice at the top right-hand corner, well, first off, at the top middle, underneath your document package, you can sort attachments based on type, right? So as you notice, we've got 3 attachments. You can either sort it by PDF documents, Word documents, or whatever documents are in there. RMS accepts quite a few different type of attachment types. It doesn't accept all of them due to security risks, but it'll do .zip, it'll do .x, it'll do XLSX, it'll do email files, SDUF files. It'll do almost anything. So you can just drag and drop them in there. Again, PCF wants stuff signed, so you can sign stuff digitally, or you can mark that it was manually signed. Either way, RMS will deal with both. But to select that signed document, you click on that, you hit next. It's going to ask for your PIN with your CAT card. You hit next again and finished, and you're good to go. You can choose the position of the signature on the document as well. Again, you won't be doing this to every document. It highly depends on your district policy. It depends on whether or not the document actually needs a signature. If it's an old how-to, you don't really need to sign those, right? So here's what it looks like after some of the stuff has been signed, not everything. And whether or not it's been shared off with the contractor. Note the complete package button after you've signed it. You don't have to sign it, but if you want to, you can. That complete package is important because that's how you know it gets sent off to PCF, and then you don't have your PCF admin telling you, hey, you didn't send this off to PCF like you were supposed to. It also sends it off to the contractor in this case, because why? We are the government doing a letter to the contractor. So you need to make sure to hit the complete package button. And as being marked, make sure to hit the back button to save everything. Don't just kill RMS at this screen. Hit that back button, it saves it off and sends it off. All right. So back to the correspondence letter. You're not done yet, right? You got the document package with the attachments. You're going to put in a brief summary to let them know, hey, check out that document package. I got some files in there that I need you to review or whatever, right? And then you're going to need to change the sent status to either approved or sent. Depending on your district policy, some districts, the person approving the letter, or excuse me, creating the letter is not the person who approves it or sends it. It can be a different person, right? So once you do letter sent, boom, off it goes to the contractor, okay? So keep that in mind. Notice the bottom left-hand picture there. Everything's grayed out. Why? Because the sent status was sent, draft letter sent. So the moment you do draft letter sent, boom, off to the contractor it goes. Yeah. And it gives you a yes or no, pop-up box that says, yes, are you sure you want to send this? If you do, it's going to be, grayed out, that sort of thing. Now, note, when you send off that correspondence, it's going to disappear on the module that you're on, right? Because you're probably on, received, or you could be on a draft or whatever, right? If you're on the draft one, if you sent it, it's going to be in the sent folder. So keep that in mind. It didn't disappear. It just may be in a different holding tank, right? In this case, it's in the sent letters. I usually stay in the all box because it's easier that way for me personally, but there are some contracts that have thousands of correspondence letters, and doing those makes it a lot easier to find stuff. Again, if you guys didn't know, that search box, you can just type anything in that search box and it will start, dividing what's in the lower box, the selection view, based on that search. And if you're searching for something exists and it's not there, pay attention to what module you're on, because that dictates that as well. All right. Alrighty. Okay, and this is what it looks like. Let's see here, receiving a letter from a contractor. So government opens up the receive tile in blue. So yeah, same thing. It looks very, very similar, right? So the contractor will go in and they can reply to the letter once they get it. The contractor will have the option to reply. The contractor will also have the option to do a document package and download those files and whatnot. All right, so this is the generating Word template section inside of a document package. So this kind of goes back to when you're creating a correspondence item inside the document packages. Those of you that have used RMS for a while, you probably remember the Word templates back in the 2.38 days. Those Word templates, you can access those via the Generate Letter button up on the top right-hand corner of a document package. So depending on your district, you may have a whole bunch of templates that your district uses to do Word templates. You may or may not. There's a lot of districts that don't use it. There are quite a few districts that do use it as well. But anyway, that's where you get to the Word templates. You hit the Generate Letter button. You may have macros that your district has set up to do letterheads, or a specific letter that you need to send each contract in your office that has to be sent out. And this is one easy way to do that. You use a Word template to generate a Word document that's standardized. It means you don't have to sit there and drag and drop. You can just choose the pre-selected Word template. That gets pretty complicated. If you've never dealt with that before, don't worry about it. Just some things you can do in RMS, you don't necessarily have to. All right. Request for information. Again, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Request for information. There was a headquarters mandate back not terribly too long ago that said only contractors send RFIs. Again, there are some districts that have government RFIs, and RMS does deal with those. They're called G RFIs, but most of the time, contractors are the ones adding RFIs, and they're the ones requesting information from the government. And these become part of the record, right, of the contract. And these are very important because if there's an audit later on, or there's a, contractor has a complaint or or a problem with the contract, a lot of times RFIs are the first place everyone goes to. The auditors will go to the RFIs and look, all right, were the drawings there? Were the sketches there? Was it agreed upon? Was there back and forth communication? This is a kind of the system of record. So it pays to put a lot of effort and time into this early on, so that later on, if there is a problem, which you hope that there isn't, but you plan that there is, you can come back here and deal with that. So tips right here. With the RFI screen, yes, there's outstanding RFIs. You want to click that to open up all the outstanding RFIs. It'll let you know whether or not the status is complete or not. When you open up an RFI, you're going to have two tabs. You're going to have the contractor's RFI tab, and then you're going to have a tab where you can respond as the government, right? The contractor has the ability to do a document package. They have the ability to drag and drop documents just like you did. They can put a date on there. You as the government can go in and do a response. The screenshots that you see on the screen right there they're not the entire screen, so they're just an FYI. You can add a document package in your response. You can put in a response. That button called RFI form that you see right underneath the help button, that gives you a preview of what the RFI will look like before you send it off to the contractor. So if you're kind of curious what it looks like before you send it, click on that. That'll give you a little bit of a preview. And that's based on the information added. But yeah, RFI is kind of simple. You just go in and you respond. You put in a government response. Note, most districts that I've seen, when you generate the letter, it's not the person who's going to be approving to send it. So when we were talking about the contractor personnel, remember that? The COR and the ACO, they have to go in here and approve. And you will probably not see that checkbox if you're not the ACO and the COR. So if you're the person that goes in and generates these letters, gets them all sent up, ready to go, that checkbox won't be there for you. That'll be for the ACO to go in and, all right, I approve this to be sent off. The reason why they have that approval process is because this becomes part of the record on the contract. This becomes something that I'm sure you've had all this grilled into you where, anything put here can be used against you. So, and it also can be used to defend the government if there's accusations and whatnot. So very important, you follow your district's process. Yeah, exactly. Audit evidence later on. That's something that we deal with a lot here at the RMS Support Center. If there's ever an audit, the first place they go is to us. And we have to pull up an old contract, that 10 years ago, whatever, right? 5-6 years ago. And we look at that contract and try to figure out what's going on. Our request for information is a great way to figure out what was going on, what communication was going back and forth. And of course, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years later, it's kind of hard to get people that may or may not be working at that district anymore. So anyway, kind of important to put all this into perspective as well. Anyway, all right. This is the contract user entries module. So this is back, open up contract, go to the administration tab, and there's this module called contract user entries. What does this module do? This is for word templates, for macros. If you're brand new to RMS, again, you're probably not going to be using this, but this is where you can set up specific macros for your contract. Depending on your district's policy, this probably will be set up for you. But if you have word templates that pull from these, you can create word templates that pull from these, like addresses, exactly, addresses, numbers, whatnot. It makes it really easy to put this into a predefined field that can be pulled from later on repeatedly over and over and over again without you sitting there typing it over and over and over again, wearing out your keyboard and your fingers and all that. So this is done. It depends on your district. I've seen them done differently. District admins will deal with this, office admins will deal with this, or at the contract level, COR is dealing with this. but yeah, mostly for Word templates. All right, this module is very important. Why is this module very important? The reason why this is important is because this is how you link the contractor up to your contract. So you're kind of wondering at this point, right? I have a contract in RMS. How do I assign the contractor to this contract, right? This is the screen you're going to do this. Now, if you're curious what module we're talking about, we're back at open up a contract, go to the administration tab, and click the prime contractor module, okay? So you're on the prime contractor screen. This is how you assign the contractor to your contract. So that first tab called RMS, or excuse me, that first little blue bar there, RMS3 prime contractor, it's not going to be assigned when you open up a brand new contract, right? So you're going to click on that. And what that's going to do is that's going to pull from a list of predefined prime contractors for your district. If you don't see your prime contractor in that list, you need to contact the district administrator to go in and add that prime to your list of district's prime contractors. If you do see them, you can go in there and assign them. Boom, good to go. The second button there, the copy DUNS and contractor information, again, you can choose to copy what is in the prime contractor to your contract, or you can choose to manually enter, right? So we have some contracts where a prime contractor will have multiple contracts in your district and they'll have different job sites, right? So for contract A, you may want to have different information than contract B. So there's, you kind of wonder, why do we have that button there? If it just pulls from that prime contractor, that's why. Because some primes will have different site offices. And those different site offices may be dealing with different contracts in your district. So that's why there's a little bit of complexity there. Now, keep in mind, if there's ever a problem on your contract and your COR or your contracting officer tells you, quick, lock out the contract so that the contractor can never cannot make any changes to the contract. That's what that prevent contractor mode access button does. That basically shuts out the contractor from accessing the contract while whatever is happening, right? Who knows? You probably never have to use this, but if you need to, that's there for you. Again, a lot of this information, it should be able to be pulled from the district office library, but if you're asking what to put in here, we really won't be able to help you out with that. You'll probably have to contact somebody at your district. But anyway, that second tab at the very top, there's a contractor staff. It's probably on the next slide where we talk about that. Oh, no, there's a contractor staff. We'll get to that later. Oh, there it is right there. Okay, so perfect. Contractor staff, there's the tab where you're going to give the username. That's where the usernames and passwords for your contractor are set up. If you're working with a contractor that has had many contracts in your district already in the past, they're probably going to have a ton of contractor staff. You won't have to do a thing. However, if you got a brand new contract with the brand new prime contractor who has never worked in your district before, you're going to have to go in here and add contractor staff. They're going to need to register a username and password in contractor mode. They need to tell you what their username is that they registered. Don't assume, because we have a lot of government users go in and assume the contractor is going to register the email address that they use to communicate with you. They don't always do that. So you need to ask them, hey, register an account in RMS. At the login screen, they can do that. Take that username and add it. So you see it here on the screen. You're going to add the staff member. You're going to type in their username, put in the first name, last name. Very important. The very first person that you add needs to have administrative rights. At that point forward, that person can add the rest of the contractor staff. You don't need to. You can if you want to. If you're feeling extra generous and you got nothing else to do, of course, we all don't have that. But my point is, that first person you add with admin rights, they are in charge of adding the rest of the contractor staff. You do not have to. So a lot of prime contractors will have 20, 30, 40 people that'll have access to the contract. And it's up to that first admin that you add. You have to add them. That's that barrier to entry, right? The contractor can't just install contractor mode and boom, get access to a ton of contracts. They have to be added. Their username has to be added by you in the contract here. Now, the good thing is that prime contractor, if they get another contract in your district, guess what? You can assign that same prime contractor to that other contract and all the usernames are there. So you only have to do this once, okay? All right, so we're back here on the prime contractor tab. Yep, okay, perfect. Going on to subcontractors. Okay, now the subcontractor module, we're back here at the administration tab, subcontractors module. This is where you're going to add, not you, the contractor will add the subcontractors most of the time. unless you still want to. The contractor will go in and in contractor mode add all the subcontractors that are working on the contract. Again, if it's just the prime, there's not going to be any subcontractors, right? There's just going to be the prime. But here's where you can also add, edit, delete if you want to, but most likely the contractor will go in and add, edit, and delete subcontractors. All right. The most important thing about subcontractors, of course, is payroll and insurance, right? And that adds a lot of work on the contractor side, and the government needs to verify all that. So on the subcontractor, when you're adding a contractor or subcontractor, this is what the screen looks like. You're going to give them a trade, you're going to give them an address, you're going to give them a title, full name, whether or not insurance is required or payroll is required. When the QA rep goes out on the job site, a lot of times they're looking for this stuff, right? So that's important to check all these boxes and set this all up. And again, if you're joining a contract as a new government person, a lot of this stuff should be set up for you, right? Unless you're the person in charge of setting up a contract. Again, there's a common error there, with payrolls, ending day of week. You want to make sure not to change those, because you change those and that kind of messes up the flow of the contract, right? But it happens, it wasn't set up correctly, or there's a change to the contract due to whatever. It can mess up the payrolls. Again, if you're at a point where you're not sure what to do, RMS Support Center, check us out, give us a ticket. We'll do what we can to help you out, and whatnot. All right, so contract insurance, again, this is a module usually done by the contractor. So again, we're back at the administration tab. So you open up a contract in RMS, you go to the administration tab, contractor insurance module. So that's what we're talking about right now. A contractor insurance module, this is where the contractor is going to be proving that each one of their subcontractors has insurance, right? So they're permitted to be on the job site. So this is a great place to check that out. The expiration dates are also important. I think that's what a lot of you all are looking for, right? Okay, so that's contractor insurance. Again, usually the contractor is the one that is inputting this data into RMS. All right. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you open up the contractor insurance. If you guys didn't know already, those blue tiles at the top, they help you sort the data. So some of these contracts that are large contracts, you're looking at thousands of pieces of information. So sorting that is real helpful. You can also click on those black tiles with those filter icons and sort that way on the selection view as well. But anyway, yep. So this is what it looks like in here. Again, contractor is going to be doing most of the data input on this. This is what it looks like when you open up a contractor insurance. It's got 3 sets of dates, another set of the date, the SF1413, and the ability for the contractor to actually upload a scanned copy of that to a document package if that's what you so require on the contract, right? So that was one of the requests that we had with insurance, was can we upload a signed proven copy of the insurance for each one of these contractors? Now keep in mind, RMS, you're not supposed to be putting PII into RMS, right? So make sure that there's no social security numbers, there's nothing that's PII on those documents, to your best ability. Yeah, alrighty, moving on. We have, okay, so this is what the SF 1413 looks like. Contractor can upload each one of these to a document package if they so choose. There's some contracts that don't require it, some contracts that do. If you're asking if your district does, you got to find somebody in your district to do whether or not your district requires this. Perfect. All right, next. See here, we have, oh, there we go. So inside of this is a document package that's associated with contractor insurance. The contractor side, they will need to submit the document package for review, and you as the government can go in and approve or send back the document package. Keep in mind, once you approve the document package, off to PCF it goes. But again, each document package is kind of like a module. Depending on where it is, it's going to look the same. And it's the same situation. If it's a government document package, you just need to complete it, right? If it's a contractor document package, the contractor submits it for review, you accept it, and then complete it on your side. Yeah. And again, we were talking about the insurance module. So now we're talking about the contractor payroll module. The payroll module is obviously a little bit different than the insurance module, but again, in order for there to be a contractor payroll module, the contract setup that we were talking about before, that checkbox for track contractor payrolls and RMS needs to be checked. Same thing for insurance. So if you're looking at your contract and you're going, hey, there is no underneath administration, there's no insurance or payrolls. Well, go check out your contract setup, make sure those two are checked, right? And depending on how your contract is set up, you can have the ending payroll to be final payment or the contract's physical completion or the construction completion. If you're asking, well, what do I put in there? That is dependent on your district. So that's your district policy. Someone in your office will hopefully answer that question for you. We definitely can't answer that one, but we can tell you what happens when you choose those. All right, so inside of contractor payroll, this module gets a little involved because it's based on the start dates for your subcontractors, your contract start date, days worked on the job site. It gets fairly complicated fairly quickly. You can sort the payroll date column here by clicking on that little filter icon and choosing dates. That makes it real easy to say, okay, I want all the payroll for this date. So instead of, on some contracts I've seen, we're talking 20,000 payroll entries because they have so many subcontractors working and it's been on for 5, 6, 7 years, right? So here you can click that little filter icon and filter based on a specific date. Keep in mind that that filter stays there until you remove that filter. So you might need to clear a filter to see other dates, right? But this is what the payroll module looks like. Your district may or may not do it. We put a little handy contractors on site button on the top right-hand corner. So up in the top right-hand corner underneath the help button, you can click that and it will let you know all the contractors that have a start date that are on site. And that makes it a little easier to kind of identify, well, how come this contractor isn't showing up or whatnot, right? The government needs to go in and edit every single one of these and confirm the payroll. And once it's been submitted to the government needs to approve it or send it back for corrections if it doesn't quite work out right. You know, so depending on how it works. But yeah, let's see here. We have, reviewing contractor payrolls. This is what it looks like on the government side. Of course, why is all that stuff grayed out up at the top there? Because that comes from the contractor, right? That you're not going to be able to edit that. Once the contractor fills that out, they're going to send it off to you. Once they send it off to you, you can either accept or reject it. Keep in mind, we keep a history of all the changes done to this payroll item at the bottom. So that'll let you know, hey, has this been submitted before? If it was, what happened to it? So you can edit those and see the different revision histories for this payroll. The reason why that's important is because when there's audits or there are complaints or issues on the contract, a lot of times it can deal with payroll. So that's why it's important to keep this up. Yes, it's a little bit of a pain to keep this updated, but in the end, you know what they say, right? More sweat and tears now, less problems later. So it's you want to keep this updated as much as possible. There we go. Same thing for the labor interviews. It's a little bit less of a complicated module, but here again we're going back to the administration tab. This is another module inside of administration. The labor interviews button. You click on that. That opens up the labor interviews, and this allows you to go and if you're on the job site, you can interview the subcontractors to make sure, hey, they are who they say they are. And whatnot. Keep in mind that we want to try to keep PII out of RMS as much as possible. So, so whatever you're signing or whatever you're submitting into RMS, make sure it doesn't have social security numbers and all that stuff. All right. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so this is what the labor interview screen looks like, right? So a lot of times when you're out on the job site, you're interviewing some of the subcontractors, you're going to be asking them specific questions. Now, so a lot of times I get government users asking me, well, my district doesn't require me to ask for this or that. Well, okay, that's fine. Just leave it blank, right? You don't necessarily have to fill out everything in RMS. Most districts do require it. So you're going to be putting in the name, their interview code, or excuse me, their labor code, what subcontractor it is, their wage rate, whether or not they have sick leave. You're going to put in comments, and you may scan documents in, into RMS. So if you have them on your computer, you just drag and drop them into the document package. If there was a problem, you can set that as unresolved, yes or no, whether or not, if there's another person in your office that does the payroll checking, because we want to make sure everyone's getting paid as they should. All right. At this point, we are going to ask questions and take, I believe, did I hear that right? A 5-minute break? I'm not sure. If not, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to go on mute. Feel free to ask questions or type them out, and we'll be back here in a few minutes. I'm going to step away from my desk. I'll be right back.
Afternoon. My name is Matthew Rackham. I'm a help desk associate over here at the RMS Support Center, and I work with all these wonderful people down here. I'm glad to be treating you with the information for submittals and following on into quality control. So submittals, what are submittals? Submittals are just basically the transmission between point A to point B. Like Paul was talking about earlier, document packages, but we've got to have a way to track our document packages, how to go back and forth. What we do with that is a submittal register.
So submittals, we are going to go and talk about submittals today. Submittals is going to be found in your contract menu under the submittal tab. And then you have the different sections like specification section, submittal register, and transmittal log, and submittal assignments. We're mainly going to be focusing on submittal register and transmittal log, even though specification sections and submittal assignments are important areas. They're just more of an advanced user feature. So going in here, we have our specification section. Now the specification section is going to be added to the contract during the contract setup. This is based upon the Construction Specifications Institute master format that was used for building projects in the United States and Canada. It has been carried over to all contracts there. The libraries you see here are going to be from 1995, 2004, and 2014. What we only really need to know about this is that these will be the indications of each section of how it applies to each individual piece of the contract. You can find this information in your user manual within Chapter 8 in Section 8-1. Now, within the submittal register, this is also known as our ENG Form 4288. There's 3 parts to this screen. You have the colored blocks for filtering the submittals. That's up here in the top right. The list of the items in the submittal register, and then the transmittal history that is not really shown here, but it's typically located on the bottom. Now, within this submittal history, the submittal section, this data grid, just like any of the other data grids we've seen before, you can be able to sort by using the filter buttons. Then when you have those open, you can select by whichever case you want. You can grab the whatever item you want, whatever column, and bring it up to the gray area to sort it by that area. Or you can go into the search box and look for whatever item you're looking for. Say if you're looking for something in seating, that would be like section 32 space 31 space 11 space 00. I'll take you to the seating section, and then I'll bring you everything. Now, the submittal register is more of a table of contents. We always got to have the beginning of it, the submittal, and once you have the submittal register set and created, then you can start adding the stuff into there through the transmittal log. When we go to enter the submittal item, this is after you've gone through and clicked on the add, or if you're going back into it and clicking on edit, this is where you're going to get into this view right here. This view is going to show you the section number of what you're working on. Now, that section number is the ones that were identified within the 1994, the 2014, 2004 sections from the specification sections. So it's already going to be populated. It's going to be grayed out. You can't really access it anymore. The item number is going to be pre-populated when you click on the add button. That's what starts to indicate in there. So since we're in the edit screen, we're not going to be able to look at the item number anymore. We're not going to be able to edit anymore. However, in the edit section, we're going to be able to update the description. You can assign this submittal item to a specific activity, because everything needs to be attached to a different activity or whatever we're applying it to within the contract. You can select the setup date. Now, the government will set up review periods of 30 days or calendar days, number of copies, and default government reviewers. This is all based upon whatever your district policies are. In here, you can also determine what kind of classification you need for this submittal. and what kind of submittal type it is. Now, if you're sending in a product data or plans of something or the information sheets, it's all listed right here. Once you click on that little submittal type area, you'll get a data grid that allows you to choose any of the available options. When you go over here to your primary contract reviewer and primary government reviewer, if it is part of your district policy to fill in these blocks, you can click in those areas and you can select from the box there, and they will populate down here into the secondary reviewers if you so need to add secondary reviewers. Again, a lot of this is determined by your district policy. All that is basically needed for this is the required activity, the classification, and submittal type. Those will get it committed to the database. Now, here on this slide, we have tips for processing a transmittal from the government side. The government, when it comes in, we're going to go up here and we're going to click on pending government receipt. Once a item has been submitted from the contractor, it is not in a complete status. They will no longer be able to edit it. However, they will not have an acknowledgement of it in their statuses until we are, as the government representatives, go up here to the pending government receipt and click on the blue tile to show everything in the data grid. And then right in here, you can put in the date that you received it by the government. Now, you don't have to initially receive it until you view everything in there to make sure everything is correct. By viewing into it, you can go into each individual item, look into the document package. Within the document package, the first thing will be the ENG 4025 that is generated when it first, when the submittal process creates. And you can look at all the other additional items that they have included into the submittal, whether it's for an action, information, responding to an RFI, or providing additional payroll documentation, any kind of transmission of a digital record from point A, from the contractor to the government, will be all recorded in the transmittal. When you get done and you believe that you were good and everything is good, you can accept the package. That's when you can go in here and put the date into the received by government. And that's when the contractor will receive their notification that the submittal was sent up to you and you have received it and it is pending review right now. If there are issues with the package, you have the option right there to return for corrections. It is highly advised to enter in whatever you want to put into the government review by notes. If the contractor is missing submittal data, like comments that they were required to put in there by policy, or they're missing specific items or receipts or labeling, then it is easily be able to return back to them. It'll come back up into their submittal register that it's ready for them to review, and that it has been returned for corrections. Now, there is a log that keeps the back and forth to let you to determine how many times this submittal has been gone from point A to point B and from point B to point A. Submittals are a really simple process. It's just a transmittal of all the digital documentation from point A to point B. Are there any other questions for this section? No, we went through it pretty quick there. We didn't really discuss that fourth module within the submittal section, but like I said, that's going to be more for an advanced features of work. I take it that all the submittal questions are getting answered within the chat. That is great news, great news. Appreciate you sticking with me. We are going to drive on into the QA/QC tab. Now, within the QA/QC, we have the QC summary, the QA daily reports, QC daily reports, weather delays, features of works, three-phase inspections, the AHA, the hazard analysis, and within each QC requirements, there's all sorts of other items, such as installed property, transferring a property. We also have equipment checks, exposure hours, QA tests, required verifications, and planned interviews. Now, within the QA daily reports, that's where the government will be entering the daily reported documentations of the day's events and activities. Now, this is supposed to be subjective. It needs to be subjective. It is not opinion-based. It is fact-guided. The QA/QC summary that is a graphical representation of all the statuses of the various QA/QC elements with a point and click interface for accessing a list view of all the selected items that we have within there. The QC daily reports is a section where the contractor writes down their daily documentation of whatever happened during the day's events and activities. Features of works is where the contractor will list all the features of works needed to complete the work. The three-phase inspections are where the contractor will develop a list of common deficiencies to watch for within each feature of work. Hazard analysis will be used as a section to log and track all of the activity hazards. The QC requirements is where the section to log and track the contract requirements, such as user schools, installation property, and transfer property. Equipment checks. This section is typically used to log and track inspection dates and usage of equipment on site. Dredging equipment, if applicable to the contract, which includes dredging, uses this section to log and track all the hours and time on their dredging equipment. And then exposure hours is the section where contractor records and submits monthly exposure hours. Now from the contract menu screen, this will be the third tab over. It's right directly to the left of the submittal tabs. There are a lot of modules within here. It is sometimes daunting, but what is most important when you look at all of this is that you can read the quick little descriptions there about what you're looking for. Now, we need to remember that the government does the QA side and the contractor does the QC side. But if you want to see a quick roll-up of what everything is going on, that'll be in the QA/QC summary. You can see both sides of the show. It's very, very useful in all of the areas I've had worked with so far. Moving on, we have the QA daily reports. Now this chapter is where all the information on the QA reports provides general information and utilizing the associated quality assurance module. This is where we want to record any weather delays, any tests that were going on, any planned labor interviews if we anticipate labor delays, phases of the features of the work and three-phase inspections, and anytime we come upon an AHA or an AHA. Over here, when we're creating the daily QA report, you're going to have pretty much of the similar scene as the QC, except when you select the QA daily report, you're going to have the 3 or the 4 modules up here, how to sort by those modules. You can either go through all of them, completed, not completed, or not required. Typically, we want to go into the all so we can get a better review. Once you're in that all, just go ahead and click on that search box, or you can go ahead and drag the column headers up to the gray area to better sort the area. Now, there is a multi-sign feature within the daily reports. That is based upon your district policy, if you should be able to use it or not. Of course, we want to make sure that all the QA reports have been reviewed and inspected for accuracy prior to completing the multi-sign feature. And when you do that, you'll just go ahead and select that multi-sign feature. It'll give you all the options of what you need to go through. It's a really easy step-by-step process. If you have any other issues with that, we are definitely here all the time to assist you with the multi-sign features. And we have great YouTube tutorials on this that shows it step-by-step through the process. Unfortunately, we're not really going to get into that with this training, but it is a very good piece of information to find on the YouTube channel. Now, when we create the daily report, as we see here, you have the several modules that will be listed here. We're not able to see it all in this screen right here. That's why they're all expanded out over here. You have to scroll up and down through there. Within each QA daily report, you can add the document package, just as with any other kind of audit evidence that you need to transfer back and forth or to keep part of the contract file. When we start a QA daily report, you want to begin with the weather. Going into the weather is a very important area because here you will determine if it's how it was set up in the contract setup, if it was set up with a military or civilian weather, what kind of measurements you're going to enact, what's the options that you're going to put in there, and how will this affect the end status of the contract itself. The delay, if any, can cause the fluctuations within RMS to automatic, or will allow RMS to automatically calculate some of these other dates that are scheduled out. Once we get done with the weather report, you will come back to the summary screen. Up here, we'll see the summary of all the information that is displayed from all the different sections all in one screen. You can all go ahead and pull up the QA daily report to see it out into a printable form already. But if you just want to look at the subsections of everything that's done completed there, you can just go ahead and look at this screen right here and scroll up and down through here. Next, we will be going into the QA narratives. This QA narratives are some contracts will be prescribed specific narratives as defined by district policies. This area is linked to a library that contains narratives for civil works contracts, military contracts, and other report types. However, there may be specific narratives that coincide with an internal reporting system that may not be listed here, which is why it also has the ability to manually add a QA narrative. Now, the QA narratives are something that needs to be populated through there every single day, and it can become tedious to type each one of those out. Some of us are not all great typers, such as myself. Sometimes I chicken peck, and I really appreciate having the ability to go through and just select the narrative that I need and then click the OK button. Once I click the OK button, it just goes ahead and it populates it into my narrative field. Once I have the narrative field open up, then I can go ahead and enter in the data, check if it is safety related or not, determine which shift, and if this is still an unresolved issue, assign it to a staff member. And as always, with everything else in here, we click on the back button to save it and commit it to the record. Once you commit it to the record, you'll notice on the QA summary screen that your QA narratives will increment by 1. When we create the QA daily report, we will go in there and we will enter into the deficiencies. Now, the deficiencies is on that tab along the left side, that if you find any item that is not within the contract guidelines or something that just definitely needs to be pointed out, you can select that field right there. It brings up this default box here where you can select the location, whether it was a safety violation, put in the description, assign it to an activity, who was the staff member, shift, and any kind of document packages. Now, of course, this one is very important because it has a revision history. Deficiencies need to be corrected. They need to be addressed, especially if they're safety violations. So we definitely want to have a revision history of what's going on with this so that they can come back and identify these deficiencies. These deficiencies will also show up as KPIs upon the action items when they first log into the contract menu. You can find all this information in section 7.1.5 of the manual that we have out on distribution. Next on the list down there, number 4 from the top will be the QA test. Now, the QA test module is will point outside of the QA daily report, but the PE enters the program engineer will be entering the planned QA test for this. Now, this is all the test determined by whatever is going on for the district policy and what is needed for that contract. The individual, the PE, will be able to select which section it is to be assigned, what test they're doing that day, which activity is it applied towards, any document package that needs to be assigned to it as well. They can put their name on there, and if it assigns to a specific paragraph of the contract. Then we have the QA final follow-ups. On the Q&A final follow-ups is when we will go in there and enter the after the contractor has made their definable features of work completed, we can go in there and rate the activities associated with these DFOWs. And this assists the QA, the quality assurance, and the project engineer in developing an overall quality control program to enhance the performance of the whole evaluation process. Now, once the DFOWs have been selected, you'll just enter into this module here and select which ones that need to be into there and what is the rating code for it. And again, once you are done, you can just click on the back button to commit it to the database. The sixth item from the top of the list is the verification of the QC requirements. Here, once we're in there, you can look at all the QC requirements that are currently being examined. We can look at the difference by sorting them through the QC tests, anything that's in a user schools, or anything that applies to installed property, or anything that applies to transferred property. There's so many different options there. Once you get into there, you can click on the option and then click whether it was concur or if it needs to be reissued. If the QA requirements did not pass the inspections, it definitely will need to be reissued. When you click on that, it will populate it with the information of the QA date. After it has that information, that's an automatically generated item based upon whatever date that you are currently in. So if you are in QA daily report number, we'll say 1700, and 1700 happens to be May 18th of 2013, when you click on concur or reissue, it'll populate that date there. But being that this example here is showing QA daily report 1883 of June 27, 2013, if we click on concur or reissue, it'll populate the date of that day. It will not populate the date that it is currently, like 2022. It'll populate the day of this report into that date. That is a very important thing to pay attention to. When you're going through and inspecting that you check on those QC requirements have been completed for the specific date of the QA daily report. If it's not the specific day of the QA daily report, please back out, go back to the data grid of the QA daily reports, find the report with the correct date that you are looking for, and then go back into there so that whenever you click on the concur or reissue, it'll populate with the date mentioned up here. Labor interviews, the seventh from the top of the list, found in section 7.1.9. Labor interviews will record the standard interviews using the standard form 1445. Now, these are a representation of the spot checks that verify that our contractors on this job site are compliant with all labor standards and provisions of the contract. When you go through and complete the labor interviews, when you click on the employer list down here, it will populate a list of either the prime contractor or any subcontractors assigned to the contract in question. You can go ahead and enter in the employee name, labor classifications, wage rate, all that other stuff is guided by district policy, as it was briefly discussed with Paul in the previous one. But this is now located for your information. Labor interviews are located within the QA daily report. And then mishap reports. Anytime an accident or project engineer or quality assurance rep enters a mishap, they need to indicate it on the date of the QA report. It's not just saying that if it happened today, even if it's happened in the past or any item, we need to ensure that we are going into the correct QA daily report, selecting the mishap reporting, and then entering the data within that and supplying all of the documents for the document package for the audit evidence. Here you can select whether it was recordable or not based upon your district policy. I know that is a highly asked question, whether or not if it's recordable. You definitely need to talk with your district administrators, especially your safety officers, to determine if that accident or mishap was recordable. Once you're done, we'll click back to commit it back to the database. Once everything is completed on the QA daily report, you can look at it from the main screen, see the summary of it, or you can go up there and to the top right and click on that QA daily report. It'll go ahead and give you the quality assurance report with everything on there. The report completed and document packages will have its own document package on the summary screen. That did not provide a pretty good view of it, but right back here on at the base of all of this, down here is where the document package with all of this information will be stored. That's where the quality assurance record, the QAR, will be populated as well. Now, all of this stuff will be completed by the government representative, and when it's completed and signed and submitted, it goes into the contract file. From the contract file, it can be reviewed and signed and submitted to the PCF. Here we go with attaching documents to the QA report, just like any other document package. You can either drag it to the white space or drag it up here to there, or you can just click on add and then search for it. Now, when you're searching for it by your file system, if you're looking for the document that happens to be saved on a cloud somewhere, say it is saved on your Dropbox, it is not going to, the Explorer window to find that document or that link to your Dropbox is not going to immediately populate because that Explorer window does not have the permissions that your Dropbox has or your digital cloud has. So in order to access that, you will need to go through a series of steps, basically going into the computer through the user profile and then to the location of where that Dropbox is. If you have any troubles with that, please contact us here at the RMS Support Center. We'll be glad to walk you through that process to make sure that you can get everything in there. One other note to point out is that the field for when we're adding it, when we click on the add button and then to select by file, and that field can only take so many characters. After a certain extent of characters, and it's quite long, it will begin to cut off the end. So you may have the file extension, but it won't understand what it may cut off, like that .pdf or .docx. And so when you upload it into the document package itself by using the add from file system, you may get an error that says that it doesn't recognize the document. If you come upon that, the best thing to do is to move it to a more shallow level, or give us a call here at the RMS Support Center. We'll be glad to walk you through some of those steps to get it in there. Now, completing the QA daily reports, like I said, once you have done all of those items and uploaded them to their individual sections, down there at the very bottom, you're going to have the document package for the QA daily report. Once you complete the package, the document package will be sent over there to the contract file. The document package becomes read-only after you click on the complete the package button within the QA daily reports. Any other supporting documentations and everything else is all viewable from the contract file. Now, the signed contractor documents must be manually added to the contractor file folder if there are any more additions to it, or we can come back here and add it into there. But it is not a big issue. It is just a simple matter of going through and making sure that we have the correct documents in the correct place. Once it all gets into the contract file, after we ensure that it has the correct signatures where it needs to be in compliance with the regulations, then it can be submitted to the PCF with no issue. And here we go with QC daily reports. Now, we can definitely tell that we are in the contractor mode because, one, it states that it's in contractor mode, and the buttons up here, the icons, have changed from blue to this golden color. Contractor mode is a very good option, a very handy option for government representatives, especially those that are district administrators or administrators over specific contracts. It allows us to get in there and see what they're going under, and this it allows us to see what's on their side and what is happening on their point from their point of view. Here in the QC daily reports, though, we can see that they have the same kind of modules as we have in the QA daily reports. It's able to select and group by all completed or not completed. Again, it's with the dragging the column headers up into the gray area, or you can just click into the search button. Once again, though, you do want to ensure that you are selected into the correct area, like this says all QA daily QA reports. That's because it's set to the default area there. So when you search there, it's going to go through everything there. Contractors can upload and sign documents into their QC daily reports. There's options on there just the same as for the government contractor or government associates that you can say the document was manually signed. However, it is best to digitally sign it because then that uses the information that is on your computer to make an unmistakable digital fingerprint that it cannot be reproduced in any other way. Now, in the QA/QC summary, this is where we can look here and look at the QA summary and determine what is going on with all their different things here. Deficiencies by QC, deficiencies issued by QA, QA final follow-ups, QA requirements, labor interviews. This is a kind of a overview worksheet of what we want to see on a daily basis to see how things are progressing through a contract from a quality assurance standpoint. It's also a great place for the contractor to go to. They can click on QC summary and see how everything is sectioned out based upon the QC requirements and the QC tests and narratives. Just as we had everything on our QA side, they will be able to see everything that's required of them on the QC side. The way to get to there is obviously to the QA/QC module. Then we're going to click on QC summary, and then we just select which tab we want. Now, each one of these boxes are interactive, so you just click on it, and it will be able to pull it up down here in the grid or take you to another screen that displays the information that you're looking for. If you see it in the information in the grid, you can obviously go ahead and use the search box here to search anything within the grid. Weather delays. Weather delays is its own module because it's quite important to a contract. Within the QA/QC module, there is the weather delays section there that we can go in there, and this takes information from all of the other reports, QA and QC reports, and RMS uses the information within the section to calculate any delays due to the contractor. The module is on the government side only, which means the contractor will not be able to see it, and it gives the government the option to edit this, to agree, to resolve any kind of disagreement that may be there, to make contract modifications. The reason why it's only on the government side is because of that simple point is that the contractor is not allowed to make contract modifications. Once you open up one of the weather delay options, one of the months here, selected by month and year, you can identify which is the conflicted date, and if it was an unresolved conflict or if it was resolved conflict, we can link that to the exact QA or QC report and if it was a critical weather delay or not. Once you are click review when completed, when the month reviews is completed, and that's going to be located down in here, and this will determine the adjustment to the scheduled timelines that are found in the contract setup. Now, another one of the features found in the QA/QC module is the definable features of work. The DFOWs are in the QC plan then they have to be approved by the government after a coordination meeting between the government and the contractor. Once the DFOWs have been entered, the number of days and after preparatory initials should be scheduled. Contractor can only delete the DFOW if it is not tied to an inspection. So if any of these in DFOWs have been opened up and tied to an inspection, then they are immutable objects. They are no longer able to be deleted or changed in any sort or fashion. If there are no inspections that are assigned to one of the features of work, then they're still able to be modified, deleted, changed as at will until it meets the requirements and meets the agenda points between the government and the contractor. Three-phase inspections. Now, this is a really big thing. It's really guided by district policy. The three phases of control is it's basically the inspections that are typically happen with any common work items, preparatory, initial, and final. So whenever we have like certain items, such as like is listed here, so asphalt paving, there are certain preparatory checks that the government and the contractor has learned over time that they need to complete. So they create these three-phase control measures to do the preparatory inspection, the initial checks, and then the follow-on checks after the work is done. This will be attached to any of the QC daily reports. It goes in there as an attachment. It can also be it will be a tabulation of all the DFOWs and the number of the checks linked within the three-phase meetings. If you run into any problems within the creation or amending any of these checks, please feel free to contact us at the RMS Support Center so that we can walk through these. These are quite intensive and they do require a little bit of expertise. It's really just something that for you to be aware of. Your QA, your quality assurance professionals, your SMEs there will be really into this, as well as the contractors QC professional, SMEs. Hazard analysis. Now, at the same time that the DFOWs and the preparatory inspections are going on, we are going to create AHAs, the activity hazard analysis. After they have been created, the contractor will submit it to the government within 7 calendar days prior to the meeting. That's typically guided by the district policy. And the contractor will be able to see what are the government responses in real time. The AH module has document packages just like anything else so that we can continually upload any safety related documents that need to be in there and whatever status it is. This section does require the contractor to add it to the QC daily report. And when it's in there, it will also be included in each one of those document package to be part of that audit evidence. It's not just only selected here within the activity hazard analysis, but if it applies to a specific day, then that day will have that individual piece captured and applied to it. The all QC requirements. The QC requirements, again, we're still in the QA QC module. Now, the QC requirements are what the government's going to be setting up on the contractor's installed property or user schools or transfer property or whatever QC test that they deem is necessary. The contractors are not entering the QC test because RMS won't allow them to get it in there, but they can enter in the data of those tests. The new fields, you will, as a government representative in quality field, you can come in and enter in, and this is a section that it applies to based upon the contract, and then the QC requirement, you can edit in and there add all the, whether it's a geographical location or a physical location of the equipment, whatever it is, and when was the contract, when they completed their time. When they put in the date, they will have it on their record as well. They have to be into the specific QC report that has the QC requirement. And when they select that QC completed date, it automatically populates the date right here. Until then, it's just that date is not editable until it is entered through the QC report itself. equipment checks. Now, equipment checks are any of the installed property or no, not the installed. Equipment checks are for any of the other property that the contractor has on hand, like excavators, generators, cranes, stuff like that. When they bring on equipment that it requires to any type of maintenance or preventive care, they need to have equipment checks entered into here. Now, the equipment checks will be entered into there by just adding the equipment through the add button, and you'll get the tables to enter in the serial number and description. And then once those are entered in there, you can add all the other items in here, the make, model, description, and special inspection, last day on cycle, and equipment is if it's safe or not. And then from there, you can set up the intervals, whether it be through equipment hours or through labor hours. Some items just require to be done every so many labor hours. Other items required to be like a generator, how many hours it has been running consecutively. Those will automatically populate to the QC daily report module, and then they'll be able to complete those within each report. Right, moving on into exposure hours. Now, in exposure hours, you have a couple items to identify here. When you're in the exposure hours, you have the contractor code. Now, the contractor code will identify whether is this for the prime contractor or for any subcontractor. Again, you're going to have the contractor name, but typically when you're looking through, you may have a whole bunch of different names there, which you can easily search for, or you can just go through by the contractor code. They are also listed out here by prime or sub, and then you'll enter in you'll be able to get a running tally of what exposure hours they've been done to date, and exposure hours for the year, and exposure hours for the month. This comes from the QC daily report labor hours for any of the prime and subcontractor hours in the exposure hour report, and it gets tallied up over here. The government is able to enter in their remarks and determine whether it's in review, if the hours are accepted, or if the hours are not accepted. Again, look to your district policy for guidance on what those hours are supposed to meet according to your contract guidelines. Here we have the QA test. The QA test is also found within the QA/QC module. Once we get into the QA test, here in the slide, it says that we're roughly 10% of the QC tests are checked with a QA test. That 10%, it could be all changed up by your district policy. It could be 25%. The district that I came from a long time ago, back when Mr. Rackham was Sergeant Rackham, it was a 25%. It just depends on your district policy there. When you get in there, there's no really document packages for the folder in the QA test module, but the test reports, you have a document package folder. So once you open and you get in your modifying or looking at the QA test, like say we select this one and click edit or double click on QA test AT00001, you can determine which section of the contract it belongs to, who performed it, what paragraph, description of the QA test, which activity it was assigned against, and then you can now add up to the document package. When we're back here at the main data grid, we are not able to see the document package for each individual QA test. Required verifications. Here in this module, the QA will be checking which QA requirements will be verified by the QA. The QC requirements include the QC test, users, schools, installed properties, and transfer property. This is easier to group when you go through by the data grids down here. If you select each data grid, it'll break it out by which areas are required and which ones are not required based upon each area, whether it be installed property, transfer property, user, schools, or just QC tests in general. These settings are established with the contract setup, and they're also in line with the district policy. All we need to know from this here is that we just get in here, select that option, and then go into the individual tests. Once you have one of these open here, you can go through the data grid and open up the individual items to concur or reissue it back to the contractor. Again, it will put in the date that you are currently working on. And finally, we have the planned interview section. Over here, it's just a breakout of everything that has been put together, but it's broken down into each individual area, like the contractor code, whether it be a subcontractor or the prime contractor. All the planned interviews from various QA reports are here compiled into one central area. So you don't have to go through and look at each individual QA report and pull out each individual planned interview. All right, so that was quality assurance and quality control. I know it's a lot to take in, and it's really there for all of the QA professionals, but are there any questions? All right, thank you for your time. We're going to be moving on into your progress payments.
All right, progress payments. This is where the contractor asks for payment inside of RMS, and y'all as the government are going to go in and either approve, reject, or send back that request for payment. Everything inside of RMS kind of centers around this idea of the contractor getting paid, right? So inside of RMS, the contractor, everything they do kind of culminates into an invoice, right? So the schedule that they import through the NAS or they manually input, depending on if your contract's set up for one or the other, it will fill out the contract with pay activities that link to the line items that link to the obligations and CFOMs. Finances are a very important part of why RMS does what it does, but also for the contractor side, because everything they do gets to that point where they ask for a percentage on each one of those line items. The first thing that they're going to do, the contractor, again, this comes from the contractor, is assuming everything that is set up correctly, they're going to work out a contractor pay request worksheet. And they're going to be doing that by making sure the pay activities balance with the line items, and then ask for a percentage on those line items. In government mode, when you go into government mode, you're going to be opening up the finances tab and going to progress payments in RMS government mode to open up the finances. Right here on this screen, we've got where you can see the contractor pay request worksheet before the contractor sends it. If you want to go view it manually. When they send over an invoice, it'll be included in their invoice as well. This is what a contractor pay request worksheet looks like. You've got the line items or the pay activities, excuse me, and the amounts that are put on there, how much the amounts are paid on at the current time, and information on each one of those activities. Now, these pay activities can be linked to various numbers of items inside of RMS. Submittals, QC tests, features of work. It takes a little bit of work to get this all set up, but once it is all set up, these reports can kind of gather all that information together and put it on, for example, here, the pay request worksheet. Now, just to go over the procedure real quick, if the contract's been set up correctly with the start and finish date, then the activities are set up correctly, the contract's been linked up to CFOMs, and the contractor has input their pay activities, then when everything balances, the contractor can go in and request payment through the progress payment screen. All right, go ahead and go to the next tab. And on the finances for the government mode are located here. So when you open up a contract, you're going to click on finances, and then you can click on progress payment. Note, if you go to the screen, finances, and you see future contract, that just means your contract hasn't been set up for finances yet. Usually there's no start date in the schedule milestones. It may not have been linked up to CFOMs yet. Usually that stuff gets set up by the person who creates the contract. So you'll probably have to contact somebody at your district and let them know, hey, my contract shows future contract. Otherwise, you can go here and go to progress payments. When you go to progress payments, remember the contractor is the one that creates them. You don't want to be clicking add here unless that's what your district does. There's some contracts where the government does the role of the contractor and they hit the add button to add an invoice. However, if you don't see anything here on the screen, that's because the contractor hasn't sent anything yet. When the contractor goes in and requests payment, it will show up here, and you'll be able to double click on it and check out the status. So here on this screen, this example, we have 2 invoices on the progress payments. Again, we are in the open up a contract, go to the finances tab, progress payments module. When you open up the progress payments module, that's where the invoices are going to be. When you select those invoices, the payment status box at the bottom will change based on what you've got selected. So if you have 20, 30, 40 invoices, you can go through and kind of quick get an overview of all the statuses on your contract. What makes these invoices important also is because if they aren't done on time, the contractor can ask for interest. And from what I've been told, that's not a good thing on the government side. That gets, somebody's going to have to answer for that. So it's important not to wait until the last minute to fix problems or deal with issues when it comes to payments for the very reason of interest. So if there's any questions, definitely put in a ticket with the RMS Support Center and get that set up as quick as possible. All right, so on the screen right here, we have an invoice number 1. We opened up one of the invoices. First thing to note are those 3 buttons on the right-hand side. Most of the time, you're not going to be doing anything with those buttons because those will be set up beforehand. Those are the payment priorities, the payment terms, and whether or not it can be sent back to the contractor for corrections. You as the government, when you go in, you're also going to be putting in the pay period from, the invoice received date. The payee office, just an FYI, that will come from CFMS. So that's not something you can enter. That depends on whether or not your contract has been successfully linked up with CFMS or not. Also, a little quick note, the top right-hand corner, you see the logs and reports. You can click on those and generate a temporary ENG 93. You can generate financial reports and information on this payment before it's completed. So if you're curious how things are going to look before it's done, click on those 2 buttons and you can run that. But in RMS, the idea usually is you work from the left and go to the right. So you start on the invoice tab and you work your way all the way to the right. The end goal is to get an ENG 83 in the document package and the contractor paid, sending that off to CFMS, right? So the next step, you're going to do your pay period from date and your invoice receive date. Again, what dates to put in there? That's not something we can answer. That's all dependent on your district. RMS won't let you put one date before the other. So for example, they're the common errors, not entering the dates. I do that all the time myself when I'm going through here and doing this. It'll let you know on the obligations tab. But the payment invoice date cannot be before the pay period through date. All right. And just a quick note too, there's that final payment checkbox when it's the last payment. All right, so on the next screen, we're looking at the payment priority. Again, most of you probably aren't going to be dealing with this. This is something that's usually a little bit more of an advanced feature, but it lets you know, all right, inside of CFMS, what obligation line item do I pull money from first? RMS tries to intelligently guess, not necessarily guess, but intelligently look at what has been done in the past or how it's been set up and pull from that. Sometimes you might need to change this based on funding. So, but again, most of the time, you're probably not going to be working with this. If you got questions on the screen, we can tell you what happens when you change the numbers, but what to change those numbers to, probably need to get either an office administrator, district administrator, or somebody on the contract that knows how to set these up for your contract. All right, and then again, here's the payment terms. Refund and other days that you can put in here. These are usually calendar days. Yeah, and again, a lot of this comes over from CFMS, so it's very important that your contract was set up correctly and set in CFMS. Okay, so moving on with that whole philosophy of going from left to right, I'm on the invoice tab. Now I'm on the requested activity earnings tab. The requested activity earnings tab, very simple, is the pay activities that the contractor is asking payment on. On this contract, our pay activities are named after the line items. Real simple, right? Usually when I go in, I see new contracts in RMS, the government will make it easy for the contractor and just mirror the line items with the pay activities so that everything balances. So that's kind of why you see the pay activity descriptions named after the claims. But in this case, the activity numbers, they're asking for 10% on activity 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can sort activities based on not fully paid up at the top there, and activities with specific earnings this period. So on some contracts that I've seen, there's 30, 40,000 activities. And you only want to see the activities that actually have earnings on this period. So you can click that and it will do that. Now, say you have a question, well, what if I need to make a change to these values? Well, that's the next tab. So we'll go next, and that's the allowed activity earnings. You, as the government, can go in here and make changes to this if you need to. Now, it's highly recommended that you don't go in here and change this. You want the contractor to change this. So that's when you're going to use that send back to contractor for corrections and have the contractor change it. Because remember, if they're doing an STF import, Primavera will be the system of record for their invoices. So they want to make that change in Primavera, import it into RMS and contractor mode. Obviously, you'll have to accept the NAS import. That's a whole nother topic, but just kind of letting you know the flow of work here. They'll resend the invoice. That's the way to do it. You usually don't want to go in and do a quick Band-Aid fix because later on you'll have a discrepancy between what you've got on your screen. It will eventually get over to their side, but they may not know what's going on. So here at the bottom, you'll have an idea of all the activities that have earnings this period, and it kind of totals up the activity total quantity when you move. So as you're selecting and going on, it'll update the bottom information based on what activity you have selected. In this case, it's the first one. All right, now we're on the subcontractor earnings. So here is where the contractor will go in and make sure to report the earnings on each one of their subcontractors. This is kind of just a record for what has been paid so that you can track that. Yeah, and yes, so real simple, not much to say here other than, all right, next. All right, so the allowed clean earnings. This is a general overview of the line items. So in our case, of course, we've got 4 activities that match the 4 line items perfectly, right? Your contracts, most likely you're not going to have that. You're going to have 4 line items with probably thousands of pay activities. Maybe not, right? So on this view, what this does is that goes to a level higher because the contractor deals with the pay activities. You as the government deal with the line items, and then those line items match up to obligations and CFMs. CFMs, of course, is Corps of Engineers financial management system, right? So that's where you have the system of record for that. That's when they cut the check and pay the contractor. RMS links up with CFMs and will send this invoice to CFMs, and it can be approved in CFMs, and then the contractor will be paid. So these line items, you can look at and make sure, okay, is this line item, they're asking, this percentage of amount on this line item. And in our example here, of course, they asked 10% on each activity, which is really 10% of each line item. Kind of, anyway, but yeah, as you're selecting down, you can see the clean total amount and whatnot. So this is just kind of all right, you make sure that the contractor is doing what they should be doing and asking what they should be asking. So again, moving from left to right, you're going to continue on to the additional earnings tab. And on this tab, you'll put in the stored materials up at the top right-hand corner on the screenshot that we have right now. It's all grayed out because we have already checked the total earnings for this pay period entered. But when that box isn't checked, you'll have the ability to put your stored materials in there. And and then the standard calculation can be set there. That's kind of going into a bit more of a complicated set here. And of course, they found out with some contracts in RMS, CFMs will not approve payments over $100 million. There's a long story behind that one, but we'll have to get to that sometime later. Anyway, just so you know, you will not be able to go to the obligation tab until they check that box. Now, this is the calculation method here on how RMS will try to deal with the obligations and the line items. This gets into some really complicated calculations that RMS does in the background. I've seen some of the code that deals with this, and we're talking thousands of lines of code. It gets really complicated. If you don't know what you're doing here, it's best to find out before you do anything, and usually you won't be changing these values. All right, so once you check that box, it'll let you go to the obligations tab. And the obligations tab is where all the action happens. So we'll hit next. The obligations tab is where you're doing the final, okay, the ENG 93 will be completed. We'll get the ENG 93 document in a document package. We'll sign that and send it off to CFMs. Now, all the data you've got here, these are the obligation line items. These are the finance accounts from CFMs. So this needs to match up, right? Everything needs to be perfect. If it's not, it will tell you. There will be errors, there will be warnings. If you don't put the dates in, there will be warnings there. You know, if the contractor over asked, there will be warnings, and then you can go back and change them. If there are no warnings, you can go and check that ENG 93 completed. What that will do is that will complete out the payment and create a document package with the ENG 93 in it. At this point in time, the government's the one that signs that. RMS will ask for a manual ENG 93 when it's a final pay, because you know we want the contractor signature on that. But as you notice, when you go to the document package, there's going to be the contractor's portion with the contractor pay request worksheet, and then the government's portion with the ENG 93 and another helpful document that we put in there to kind of explain how we got the calculations that we got based on the invoice, right? So you, as the government, want to make sure to, one, accept the document package for the contractor side. Second, you want to make sure that you go in and sign the ENG 93 and the government document package and then complete it out, right? Those are the two actions that you got to do. Once you do that, you can go back to the obligations tab and send this payment off to CFMS. So you're going to go and you're going to check ENG 93 completed. It will generate the documents. You do those two actions. You complete out the document packages, sign the ENG 93. In this case, this is kind of what it looks like. And then you'll go and send payment off to CFMS. Note there is a background batch process that, so right here on this screen, it's showing you what's inside of the government document package. There's that payment calculation PDF that I'm talking about, where we try to explain with a little bit more detail how we got what we got. So it kind of gives you an idea of what's going on in the background. But you as the government, most important, you've got to sign that ENG 93. RMS will send the electronically signed ENG 93 form off to CFMS. Again, if your district does things a little differently and you manually sign, make sure to check that box, manually signed by government, and RMS will send that and send that off to CFMS. Again, remember the very final thing you got to do: complete package. Once you complete that package, off to PCF it goes. It shows up in the contract file. That's what we were talking about earlier, and we're good to go. This kind of shows you what you need to do to sign the ENG 93. You'll note there's two signatures that are needed for the ENG 93, the preparer and the COR approver. So obviously those are most likely going to be two different people. I mean, in some districts it may be the same person, but most districts they're going to be two different people. So when you go and sign, RMS will know the first person that signs is the preparer. The second person that goes in and signs will be given the approver signature position. And once that's done, you complete the package, and that sends it, that gets it ready to send off to CFMS, right? Or excuse me, yeah, CFMS. Again, accepting the document package also sends it off to PCO. So as you can tell, there's a lot going on in the background. Once that has been completed, note, you can go back here and you can click the send payment to CFMS. That will send it off to CFMS. You should be able to go off into CFMS, approve it, assuming you use CFMS yourself. A lot of times I've talked to government representatives. It's somebody else who deals with CFMS, right? There's usually a couple people in the district or more, depending on your district, that have access to CFMS. This is just telling you what I told you before, where you have the list of reports that you can generate before the payment is complete. So if you're curious, what does the ENG 93 look like right now? You know, or what does the check look like if it was going to be cut? What's the prompt pay report from the contractor side? You can run those before they're complete. It takes what's inside the invoice right now and tries to generate it to its best ability. Note, it will not be the signed version, because the signed version is in the document package, right? So, and of course, this right here is the ENG 93, what it looks like. Obviously, it won't be signed, but it puts everything together to give you what it looks like. So that way, you know, you don't have to worry about checking the box, getting it completed, and then wondering, is it correct? You can run it beforehand. All right, and again, inside the contract file, you have the ability to check to see if the invoice got there if you want to. This is the check for the report preview for the payment details on that invoice. So what this is talking about is those two buttons on the top right hand corner, the logs and the reports based on that invoice. Very good. So that's where those come from. All right, so we can fly through all those again. Oh wow! All right, so we're all done. I think the last thing to say on the On the invoices, if there are problems, again, it's best if you send it back to the contractor for corrections, because you doing a hot fix on your side can cause problems later on. And again, if you get to the point where things aren't looking right, it's best not to try to go in and fix them, because it's not terribly uncommon for someone to call us up and go, hey, I'm at the point of no return. I tried to delete this invoice. You don't want to delete an invoice unless you absolutely have to, et cetera, et cetera. See what I'm saying? Contact the RMS Support Center if things don't look right and you're wondering what you need to do to fix something up. Unless you know exactly what you're doing. A lot of old RMS admins have spent a lot of time trying to fix broken invoices. Alrighty, these are the last page that has some links, helpful videos on actions inside of RMS, how to get help, how to add a prime contractor. They're short videos that you can send to other people that may not have made this training or that you think might need information. These YouTube videos are accessible by everyone with a cell phone, contractor, or whatnot. Most of these are government focused, but yeah, that pretty much concludes the progress payment portion. Very good. I think that is the last part of this training, right, Matt?
That's it.
That's it. All right, very good. Very good. All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you all very, very much. We will open up for questions. If you want to unmute, you can ask, or you can do in the Q&A section.
The slides are on the website. Remind them.
That's right. So if you go to https://rms.usa.army.mil, we have the slides on the website. We try to post them up as soon as we can get them up there. There's an CONUS training later this month, as well as a brown bag, I believe, next month. So we'll try to get those slides up there a little bit quicker next time. But you can go up there, download those PDF slides, send them off, and whatnot. But if you're ever wondering what training we're doing, usually as it gets close to it, we'll post it on the rms.usa.army.mil website. All right, cool. I will go on mute. Oh, there's the website right there. So as you can see, we try to post outage notices. Like, for example, the last week, we had DNS issues where contractors were having a hard time getting access to the web API. So we'll put notices if we get them from the users. We're still having some issues with those DNS connection issues. The government's not having any problems. So if you connect to the VPN, you won't see what's going on. But if your contractors are saying, "Hey, I'm having a hard time using RMS," CEIT is aware, and we're working with them to resolve the issue. But yeah, the training in the middle there, we try to keep those updated. The brown bag, I think the next one is June 22nd, so at the later end of this month. All righty. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to go on mute. Feel free to ask questions. If we don't hear anything, thank you very much for attending. We appreciate it. And one of the questions we had is, will we be emailing this recording? We're going to be putting it up on our YouTube channel. So if you go to RMS Help Videos, we have a YouTube channel. There's a webinar collection, a playlist, and we put all of the videos there. So you can go there, go to playlists, and that has the webinars. Usually it takes 5 business days for us to get the webinar up there, to get it downloaded from WebEx, to edit it, and that sort of thing. But that's where our help videos are as well, the YouTube channel. Thank you, everyone, very much. Until next time, we'll see you all later. Thank you.